Elidor by Garner, 17. Spear-edge and Shield-Rim. "You're not safe loose," said David. "You need locking up." "I didn't know what it was," said Roland. "And you wouldn't listen to me. I had to show you. It's Nick's fault as much as mine." "You're so mad keen to be proved right you'd do anything, wouldn't you?" said David. "Save your breath," said Nicholas. "We've got to decide what to do." "There's nothing we can do," said David. "This raving nit has seen to that. We might as well hand over the treasures before one of us gets a spear in his back." "Look, all I've ever wanted is to be left alone," said Nicholas. "I thought if we dropped this Elidor business we'd be all right, so fair enough. I'm to blame as much as Roland. My way hasn't worked. Have you got a better one?" Nobody said anything. "How about this?" "Then how about this?" said Nicholas. "We can't fool ourselves any longer, so let's do the opposite. Let's go out and bash them first before they bash back." "But they've got spears," said Roland. "I didn't mean it that way," said Nicholas. "It's the treasures they're after, right? They're not really interested in us." "You can't give them the treasures," said Roland. "You can't let Elidor die like that. You can't. It's the most important thing there is." "If I thought it'd help," said Nicholas, I'd hand the treasures over. But those two would still be here, and so would the treasures. When they come out of their shadows, they'd no more idea. When they came out of their shadows, they'd no more idea of where they were than we had when we landed in Elidor. If they can't find a way back with the treasures, there'll be more coming after them. But if the treasures are in Elidor, we'll be left in peace. "Fine," said David, "but how do you get the treasures into Elidor?" "Search me," said Nicholas. "Maelbron won't have a hope," said Roland. "That's his problem," said Nicholas. "We didn't volunteer for this." "Nick's right," said David. "We can't hide them and we can't fight for them." "What about the unicorn?" said Helen. "That's what I mean," said Nicholas. "When you start messing around with these things, you don't know where it'll end. We'll have half of Elidor in our back garden if we're not quick." "But that was Findhorn," said Roland. "He was being hunted. You saw those gashes all down his side. He had to break into our world to escape. They want to kill him before Maelbron can find him. Maelbron was trying to tell us there's something he wants us to do." "Then he can wait," said Nicholas. It was clear the following morning that there was not much time. During the night, slates had been taken from the coal house roof, and their fragments littered the rose bed. They had been used as spades, but the frozen ground had broken them. Mrs. Watson was too busy to notice anything all day. She had an appointment at the hairdresser's in the afternoon, and then she was going into Manchester to meet Mr. Watson. They were having dinner with some friends before the New Year dance, which was being held at a large hotel in the middle of the city. "What'll be the next move?" said David. "They'll come back tonight with something to dig up the treasures," said Nicholas. "It'll be easy enough. There are plenty of garden sheds round here. I think we're pretty safe in daylight, though. They'll be lying up till it's dark." "So we lift the treasures first, is that it?" said David. "Yes. We'll have about an hour after Mum leaves, before it starts to freeze." "What's Dad going to say when he sees the mess?" "It needn't be a mess," said Nicholas. "We can stick the bushes in again, and we'll throw the earth onto a couple of ground sheets." Helen drew a sketch plan of the rose bed and labeled the bushes so that they could be replanted. Tools and ground sheets were made ready. "Now, are you sure you can look after yourselves?" said Mrs. Watson. "There's cold meat and pickles, and be sensible about going to bed, won't you? Don't sit up all night in front of the television. And fetch that coal in before dark, and put the fire guard up. The hotel's phone number is on the pad." "Stop flapping, Mum," said David. "We'll be all right." "You'll miss the train," said Nicholas. "Oh, heavens! Is that the time? Oh, I sometimes wonder if it's worth the fuss. I wouldn't go if your father wasn't so set on it." "Goodbye, Mum," said Helen. "Have a lovely time." The children watched their mother until she was out of sight round the corner of the road. "Phew," said Nicholas. They dug in relays without a pause. The knots in the flex tying the lid of the dustbin had swollen, and they had to wait while David rummaged upstairs for his wire cutters. The polythene bags were milky with condensation when the children pulled them out of the bin, but the treasures seemed to be no different for their year underground. The children dropped the dustbin back and trod the soil down as it was shoveled into the hole. The rose bushes were more or less straight. "I think we ought to put the treasures under our beds for tonight," said David after tea, "and try to get rid of them tomorrow." Yes, but how? Said Nicholas. That's it, said David. We're lumbered. Have you any brilliant schemes, Roland? Roland shook his head. David switched on the television set. And it must be tomorrow, he said. Remember this? As the set warmed up, the screeching and whistling began, and the picture, when it came, was a herringbone of black and white. It won't be long before Dad's razor starts either. They'll be fun tonight. They look so harmless, don't they? Said Helen. This cup, it's ugly, nothing. Like that bowl with pearls all round it. And full of light. Nothing like that bowl with pearls all round it, full of light. But can't you feel that they're still the treasures? Said Roland. They're still the same. Yes, I suppose you're right, said David. The real sword and these two bits of wood have the same kind of swordness about them. That's not changed. Let's try it, said Helen. I'll go and bring an ordinary cup from the kitchen, and we'll see if there's any difference. For crying out loud, said Nicholas, all of you are off your rockers. There, and I bet it's Mum's best china. They heard a cup smash on the floor in the kitchen. Helen came running through the middle of the room and slammed the door behind her. I was taking a cup, she said, off the shelf, and someone lifted the latch at the back door. It went up and down. I'd never have heard it. It was so quiet. Is the door bolted? Said Nicholas. Yes. But you'd hear anyone coming round the side of the house. I didn't. Nothing. Somebody tried the latch. I couldn't hear it. They know we've got 'em, said David. Obviously, they'd know straight away. Wait a minute, said Nicholas. Keep calm. Dial 999, said David. But before he could say any more, there was the sound of falling glass in the middle room. Out of the way, shouted Nicholas. He pushed Helen aside and threw open the door. A window pane had been broken, and a thin arm was feeling for the latch inside. The telephone was on the windowsill. Nicholas grabbed the poker from the hearth and crashed it down on the arm. There was a howl, and the arm jerked out of sight. Everybody here, quick, said Nicholas. Shove the dresser aside. And the other window. Stack the chairs on the table in front of it. What about the kitchen? Said David. Leave that. Only the fan light opens. Now bring your coats and the rucksack into the other room. Hurry, I'll put the light off in here. Nick, what'll we do? Said Helen when they were together in the sitting room. Quiet a minute, said Nicholas. He went to the front door and listened at the curtain. There's one of them on the porch. We can't keep them out. The dresser and the chairs will hold them up a bit, but that's all. We've got to move. We'll be safe in a crowd or where there's plenty of light. They won't risk being caught. Where'll we go? Anywhere. It doesn't matter. Nicholas packed the stone in the rucksack. Here, give me your cup, he said to Helen. There's room for it. No, said Helen, I'll carry it. I'd rather. Please yourself. Now listen. Have we any money? I've some from Christmas, said Roland. So have I, said Helen. How do we get out first? Said David. We'll crunch him behind the door, said Nicholas. Like Dad, only better. We wait till we hear the other one climb through, and when he is sorting himself out from the furniture, we'll flatten this one against the porch and run for it. Mind you don't trip over the curtain. Here he comes, said David. The dresser pitched forward on the floor. Ready? Mum's willow pattern, said Helen. There was a sound of scuffling and more glass tinkled. Then someone fell heavily over the dresser. Now! Nicholas slipped the catch. They thrust their shoulder against the door and lashed it open. They felt the resilience of a body trapped between the door and the wall. A man cried out, and the children were running down the middle of the road, their legs hammering the smooth surface till their thighs burned. Roland glanced over his shoulder and saw a figure lope from the porch and cross the lamplight in the darkness to the darkness of the hedge along the footpath. They're coming! Make a row! Fetch people out! Help! Help! Helen screamed. Help! Help! Lights were switched off all down the road. Help! Help! Visitors were leaving one house, but they stepped back and shut the door. On the other side of the dimpled glass, a pattern of a man reached up to slide the bolt. Please help! Christmas trees in front windows disappeared as curtains swirled across. You lousy, rotten devils! Yelled David. Keep moving! The children ran from pool to pool of street lamps, and sometimes they glimpsed a shadow, and sometimes there was a tall silhouette. And there was always too much darkness. When they turned the corner, the white fluorescence of the railway station at the end of the road was like a sanctuary. They drove themselves toward its glass and concrete, as if the danger behind, the danger of Spear-edge and Shield-Rim, would be powerless in the neon glare. They jostled through the barrier onto the platform. An electric train was idling its motor. The porter was waving to the guard, and when he saw the children, he opened a door. Come on, Come on if you want it." They were carried forward by the impetus of their running, and although all the porter had to do was deflect them by the arm into the compartment, one after the other like dominoes falling. Right away, the train glided out of the station and quickly gathered speed. And that is the end of chapter 17.